Well, I made it 1,500 miles on the car before I picked up my first casualty here with the tire. Fortunately, it had a pretty large diameter, so it made quite a big hole in the tire there. Try to get this tire plugged with a patch plug on the inside as opposed to reaming a plug from the outside in there. But I figured that'd give me an opportunity to show you guys kind of the rear suspension geometry, my first impressions when looking underneath the car here for the rear suspension components. So first thing that jumps out at me is an all aluminum knuckle. That's really nice to see. Coming from an 8th gen that was all steel, you still have exposed steel for your bushings pressed into your control arms on both ends. Trailing arm, I like how the bushing for that is tucked up really high, and the tray, the windage tray on the bottom is quite a bit below it, so it should keep a lot of the salt and everything from getting up on it during normal driving in the winter. So that's something I noticed that's kind of nice. But you know, if you do hit that with some fluid film while it's still new, you're not going to have any rust on there probably for the life of the car if you get that coated in fluid film or something right away. So another nice little touch I didn't notice before is the rotors have like a laser etched engraved Honda logo there, saying your min thickness on the rear is 8 millimeters, and it also has the date of production, 3/28/23 on this rear rotor. Rear brake caliper has these like tension springs and stuff to probably put some preload on this for bouncing around and stuff, maybe to prevent vibrations and reduce noise while braking. So there's some springs on the inside. None of my 8th gen, my SI or my S2000 have had that in there. It was just the pads and the caliper, but this one has extra tensioning springs, it looks like. There's like caps on the back of the where these would typically be bolts to go through, but this actually looks like it's threaded in here with a pin somehow. It's totally different than some of the older Hondas as far as there being like an encapsulated pin and grease here. It's like a shoulder bolt almost through this, and this caliper kind of has this narrow bushing section that doesn't appear to be like sealed perfectly with grease inside. I'm curious of how that works, but that's totally new to me, so just figured I'd point that out, that it's not like the older Hondas where you have the simple bolt back there. It looks a little more complicated to take apart. I don't like complicated things, so I'll report back if that is a problem. Of course, down here you can see starting a little bit of surface rust from this bare steel bushing pressed in. Taking a look at the springs, the Sport, anything but the SI has pretty lame soft rear springs. These are the same spring rate almost as the front. I think it's 156 pounds per inch of compression on those. You can see the sway bar is pretty meaty on this car. I think it's a 17.5 millimeter diameter bar on the Sport, and like all the hatchback models unless you get the SI sedan, which has an 18 millimeter, so 0.5 millimeter bigger bar on the rear of the SI is almost nothing. So I'm not sure why they did that, but looks a little cheaper with it all being plastic. Good part is it won't corrode, which is kind of nice, but I do plan on changing these springs and shocks out with SI rear ones. Found some on Facebook selling rear shocks and springs from a 11th gen SI with like 1,000 miles on them, because he put coilovers on. So I'm going to go ahead and try to install those. I was looking forward to seeing the part number on these struts, but they only after 1,500 miles it's already baked off. Maybe it was in the sun too long through the massive gaps in the wheels, I don't know. But yeah, just taking a look around. One other thing I noticed is, compared to the 8th gen, there's an extra lower control arm. You have your trailing arm up here, your upper kind of control arm right here, and this is kind of the classic one that everyone changes out, that adds a camber functionality probably at the end here. So that's the upper arm that generally people change out. You got your lower arm back here, but in addition there is one you can see down below here. So there's like two lower control arms. That one might be a toe link, I'm not sure. Doesn't look like there's any eccentric bolts to change your toe alignment on the knuckle. That's one thing I noticed too. I don't know if the rear toe is adjustable in this area or not. It looks like there's no toe adjustment up at where it meets the stud frame either, so maybe that's non-adjustable on these cars. I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, actually, yes, there is. Back here is your rear toe adjustment. So you have an eccentric bolt where your lower control arm that the spring rides in meets the subframe back here. I assume that probably affects camber and toe at the same time, so that's interesting, because it's going to bump that lower control arm out and in, but probably doesn't have too much of an effect on camber. So that's pretty much all I can tell you guys so far about the rear kind of design of this hatchback here. But I'll report back more with maybe a brake job in the future, but it's going to be a long time before I replace these brakes, probably years. So interesting design. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. The next video or next clip coming up will be the front.